Judging on the comments on my Blade video, it seems like you guys really love my music takes. So here's some more. These are my top 10 albums of the year of 2023. Let's do it. This album kind of snuck in here at the last second, but it certainly belongs on the list. Just before the year-end deadline, Pink Panthers came through with some super infectious pop smashes on her sophomore album, and let me tell you, this shit got me kicking my feet in the air and giggling. This shit got me wanting to eat hot chip and lie. I live in a big college town and have recently been doing some DoorDash on the side, and listening to this album on repeat while delivering food to these lazy-ass underclassmen who don't want to walk literally 5 minutes to Chipotle. It's really helped me keep in touch with my Gen Z roots. It's like I'm 19 again and don't have any real problems. A decent chunk of this album is kinda average, but these two songs in particular get stuck in my head constantly. And even though the Central C feature on this track is extremely corny, I find myself saying, "I woke up to my shorty crying," out loud at least 20 times a day. Like, it's actually crazy. I put this at number 10 because it's so new that it hasn't really got a chance to marinate with me quite yet, but it definitely has some raw upside to grow on me this next year. While not nearly my favorite King Gizzard album, I enjoyed Petro Dragonic Fuck, I can't fucking say this shit. I enjoyed Petro Dragonic Apocalypse a lot. This tweet set my expectations for it around the Murder of the Universe and Infest the Rat's Nest range, and I was initially quite disappointed when I heard Gila Monster for the first time. The vocals sounded way too goofy to be described as heavy as fuck in the way I was expecting. I saw them live 3 days before this album came out, which is what really made me come around on the lead single. Gila Monster goes crazy when you're chanting the chorus along with a sea of people all soaked with rain that's got toxic Chicago river water chemicals in it. They also played Converge, a performance that convinced me this new album would be an absolute banger. The energy across the whole record is electric. I love the driving rhythms and guitar licks. It reminds me of that one Mad Max scene with the guitar flamethrower guy. I don't have the most experience with metal and its hundreds of subgenres, but whenever King Gizzard dabbles with it, I always really enjoy it. It's definitely a genre I want to get more into in the future. I hate when I like an album that Anthony Fantano also likes. It makes me look like a huge Fantano dick rider. Which is what I am, but it sucks that it's so obvious sometimes. I got really into Jeff Rosenstock's 2016 album Worry during summer 2021, and Hell Mode is his first album he's released since that summer. This thing clicked with me right away. It tastefully mixes these supercharged punk anthems that make you want to scream at the sky, with more emotional cuts that make you want to cream and then cry. Wait, what? Jeff Rosenstock is probably my #1 artist I want to see live who I haven't seen before. I missed the East Coast tour for this album, but didn't think much of it until I had this album on repeat during parts of my road trip this fall. I remember thinking how sick these songs would sound when amplified to levels that make your chest cavity feel like jello, and surrounded by a bunch of like-minded, sweaty strangers. Spoiler alert, but Jeff is not the only ska enthusiast who will appear on this list. If you know, you know. I got into a lot of shoegaze and slowcore this year, and Midwife was easily my favorite artist that I found while exploring these genres a bit more. Swim low-key changed my life, bro. This song hits different with headphones at 2 AM, like it's actually insane. Orb Weaving is pretty cool too, I guess. It's Midwife's collaborative album with Viva Melancholia, a collection of 5 songs that spans over 32 minutes. The thick shoegaze guitar strums are a lot softer on here than the ones I liked so much on Swim, but it creates this really powerful atmosphere that pairs really well with the somber vocals and lyrics. It feels like some ASMR shit, like they're whispering each song into your soul. The album ends with the 12-minute long title track, a really cool ambient track with no vocals. It feels like music you would hear walking around in Skyrim after using the Clear Skies shout at night to make the northern lights appear, maybe around that one area near the sea with all the glaciers in the distance and the shipwrecks that you can explore. There's a lot of open space in these songs in between lines, which I really like. It leaves a lot to the imagination, lets you drift off and daydream for a bit. This is my Drain Gang adjacent pick for all my drainers in attendance. Dodmark is one of Young Lean's side projects, along with producer Good, and shares a similar style to Jonathan Leindur 96 in that he's singing and not rapping. Dodmark has more of a post-punk sound, and, more notably, it's all in Swedish. Despite not knowing what the fuck he's saying, this album is very enjoyable and had me hooked instantly during the first listen. It's a 35-minute collection of short tracks, each with its own energy and flavor. I'm usually not the biggest fan of Lean's vocals, but he shows quite a bit of versatility on here. But regardless of his vocal performances, it's the production and song structure that's the selling point here. Good does a really good job here across the board. It makes for a really fun and enjoyable listen. Not every song here is going to be everyone's favorite, but it offers enough variety I guarantee everyone can enjoy something on here. And hey, I like all of it. I didn't see this project get any attention this year, and I only found out about it because I follow Young Lean on Instagram, so definitely check this one out if you missed it. Sick was the first album left off last year's list, so I was super psyched when Earl dropped an even better project this year, just so I could talk about him. Earl and The Alchemist have worked together in the past, but nothing as extensive as a full collab album. Apparently the majority of this album was made a few years ago and uploaded to a fake YouTube channel, and no one found it even when this information leaked. Earl and Al are among the most obvious rapper and producer collaborations that you could think of. Each song on here just makes sense. Al's beats and Earl's flows fit perfectly together like two puzzle pieces on the coffee table that is hip-hop. Their mellow, meticulous styles were truly meant for each other. Vince Staples and Mike offer A+ features as well. This is the best Earl Sweatshirt album since Some Rap Songs and the best Alchemist album since Alfredo. The cutoff for Gen Z and millennials is whether you like 100 gecs or not. It's also a good litmus test for how online someone is. 10,000 gecs is the hyperpop duo's long-awaited sophomore album, and it did not disappoint. While still undoubtedly hyperpop, it's certainly a lot less crunchy than the original 1000 gecs, but still sounds just as unique and is definitely just as fun. It's by no means a bad change. I love the risk to move slightly further away from the genre that they are essentially synonymous with. Frog on the Floor and I Got My Tooth Removed are straight up just ska songs. Ska is such a goofy genre, I'm surprised it hasn't been co-opted more by Gen Z like nu metal and Steely Dan and egg punk. 10,000 gecs is all killer, no filler, front to back bangers. Makes me want to give myself a stick and poke tattoo and dress like Adam Sandler out in public. Let's Start Here absolutely popped off on Music Nerd Twitter when it first dropped in January. Lil Yachty went from being perceived as this talentless, washed-up SoundCloud rapper to a boundary-pushing indie darling literally overnight. The Crystal Shorty, Hello Kitty Bong, Donnie Darko girlies with this exact tapestry in their dorm rooms really went crazy for this one. With the instant popularity came some very polarizing discourse, as does everything on the internet. Why did Yachty have to move away from rap music to earn respect as a musician? But would this album even have garnered half the attention if it wasn't Yachty who made it? Is Yachty worse than Hitler for using an AI-generated album cover? Is Tame Impala really just one guy? My take is that Let's Start Here is so good when you ain't got a bitch in your ear telling you it's nasty. Genuinely one of the best psych rock albums I've heard in a while. It really takes me back to when I was 19 and my top artists were Tyler the Creator, Brockhampton, Gorillaz, Vampire Weekend, Tame Impala. This album would have fit right in. Such a fun, easy listen, it's really refreshing. The production is top-notch, front to back, and I love Yachty's vocals on this thing, especially on tracks like Pretty, The Ride, and Say Something. The Black Seminole is a stunning intro track, perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the track list. I had a lot of fun with this album this year, definitely check it out if you haven't, or give it a re-listen since it's been almost a year since it dropped. Yeah. As previously mentioned on Vor Dyer, Mike is one of those rappers who always kills it on features, but I had never paid much attention to his solo work until this year. He dropped 2 albums this year within a few weeks of each other. Faith is a Rock with Wiki and The Alchemist, and Burning Desire. Neither of these albums did much for me on first listen, but after revisiting a few times, Burning Desire gained a ton of momentum and eventually clicked with me in ways that few rap albums in the past couple years have. I've had it on repeat for over a month now, and it feels like my enjoyment of it grows every time I listen to it. I had always just chalked Mike up to be an Earl clone. I liked his smooth and soulful instrumentals, but I would only throw on his stuff in the background and not really pay much attention to the music. This is why I always stress how important it is to give certain albums and artists a second chance if they don't click with you right away. Sometimes all it takes is a different headspace or a change of scenery to really enjoy a piece of art the way it's meant to be enjoyed. Burning Desire is 24 tracks and 50 minutes long, each track employing a uniquely compelling flow, energy, and ambiance. It's generally all very mellow, which is probably why it didn't stand out to me at first. It doesn't kick you in the head, rather it daps you up and gives you a nice, prolonged hug. All but 2 of these instrumentals are produced by Mike himself, which, considering the variety here, is quite impressive. Despite all the attention I've given this album, I still haven't done a full deep dive on Mike's discography yet. Soon, Mike, soon, I promise. Before we get into the number 1 pick, I just want to go over some honorable mentions that just missed the list this year. Westside Gunn with And Then You Pray For Me, Sufjan Stevens with Javelin, Kevin Abstract with Blanket, Eve Toomer with Hot Between Worlds, Caroline Polachek with Desire I Want to Turn Into You, Tanuki-chan with Gizmo, Travis Scott with Utopia, Cemetery with Butcher House, and last but not least, Danny Brown with Quaranta. Speaking of Danny Brown, putting Scaring the Hose as my number 1 album was the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than this. The hype surrounding this album was so palpable leading up to its release, which is crazy considering it didn't even seem real up until the day that it dropped. The existence of this mysterious JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown collab album was confirmed almost a year prior, but by the end of last year I remember its existence had kind of been relegated back to rumor status. I was at Bruiser Thanksgiving 2022 where Danny debuted a bunch of songs from Quaranta, with no mention of Scaring the Hose. If you asked me which album I thought was real, let alone which one would come out first, I would have put all my chips on Quaranta. When an official announcement came for Scaring the Hose earlier this year, it was like Christmas morning for dudes who can't make eye contact. Eventually the single started dropping and the level of hype was unreal. A bit of a full circle moment here because my first listen of this album was on the Beef Stupid Dark Souls couch. I brought my headphones to Brendan's house that night because I knew this album was dropping, but we got back from John Wick 4 at like 2:30 a.m. I was deliriously tired laying on that beer-soaked couch. I couldn't even open my eyes by the end, and the only thing keeping me awake was the music blaring in my ears. It was one of the most memorable first listens I've ever had, and I knew right away it would be towards the top of my year-end list. Peggy really cemented himself as one of the best producers and producer-rappers of all time on this thing. It combines the crazy shit he was doing on Veteran with the more mellow-sounding stuff on LP into this chaotic, soulful gumbo. It's like if a bunch of graduation-era Kanye beats got infected with a computer virus after you tried to pirate them off 123 movies. His style works effortlessly with Danny's. They bring this crazy level of charisma and bounce off each other so effectively, both lyrically and sonically. I really hope this isn't the last time they collab together because I really need to see them live. Oh, they also did the correct thing by adding the leftover songs to a separate EP instead of releasing a deluxe version. But even the DLC tracks are some of my favorites of the year. The music video of which has this part where they have a Boston Dynamics robot getting twerked on at a strip club, which I think perfectly encapsulates the aesthetic of this album. Absolute perfection, no notes. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I'm always looking for new music to check out, so if I missed your favorite this year, let me know in the comments. I know I highlighted the negative comments on my Blade video at the beginning for the bit, but there were just as many positive responses to that video that were very thoughtful, and I just wanted to give y'all a shout out too. It was really cool to see so many people engaging with something that I put a lot of work into. That video still averages about 25 views a day, and my subscriber count has more than doubled since it was posted, which is pretty crazy. Again, thank you so much for the support and for the feedback. It's been really cool to see. I also made this little documentary about the road trip I went on this fall and the friends I visited along the way. It's a pretty long watch for one sitting, but I put a ton of work into it, so if you're bored and want to check out even part of it, it would really mean a lot to me. Alright, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!